This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello there and welcome to episode 23 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's podcast is all about food. It's titled Foreign Food, From Fishermen to Tarantulas. Yeah, that's a bit of a warning already, isn't it? So I have to give you a little bit of a heads up. If you are planning to eat while you eat this podcast, you probably want to think otherwise. There's some interesting and also very positive tales of food coming up, but there's a few things that might make you a bit squeamish. So choose your timing when you listen. So I'm not a massive foodie. I love to eat and I love to eat good food, but I don't track down, the best, most famous restaurants when I travel, and I don't go out of my way to eat unusual foods. But what I do is pretty much eat anything that's put in front of me by a local. I always try to be polite. So although my tastes are not super adventurous, and I did grow up sort of mostly vegetarian. I'm not a big meat eater at all. I still will eat pretty much anything to be polite in the right circumstances. And this has certainly led to some really weird things passing through my mouth, some things that I don't even know what they were. When I lived in Japan, I had a particular couple of friends who would take me to very unusual restaurants, and we would eat stuff where they couldn't even begin to describe to me what these things were. Mostly stuff that came from under the sea. And they'd be, I don't even know what they were, but they'd be squishy and rubbery, and they'd have eyes or they wouldn't have eyes, and all kinds of really weird stuff. But I tried to always imagine it was probably very healthy for me because, Japanese food, seafood, perfect, made me healthy. This is what I tried to imagine as I crunched up these weird things in my mouth. Another time I remember out of, hunger and politeness having something unusual was in Bratislava in Slovakia. We, a group of people from the school I worked at, participated in a local fun run. I have to admit I did not participate in the fun run, but I was a spectator, and I took the bus from one end of the fun run to the other. And at the finishing line, I was starving by this stage because we'd been waiting all morning for these people to finish running so we could all go and get a meal. But the runners were served up a cup of beer and a bunch of spring onions each. And normally, spring onions for me are a bit of a condiment or something you chop up and fry with lots of other things. But these were just raw spring onions. Apparently that was the thing. That was what you ate at the end of a fun run. And I was starving, so I had a couple of them too. But not something I would repeat, and especially not with beer in the morning. But anyway, it was, a culturally interesting food experience. I think my specialty is probably trying desserts of all countries, and it's pretty rare that I meet a dessert I don't like. So if you meet up with me in a foreign country, let's head to a dessert bar somewhere. Now, today, the first guest who's going to talk about food actually has a really different and really interesting angle. So my guest is Lola Akinmade Åkerström, and I know I've completely demolished the Swedish part of her surname for sure, and I've asked Lola several times to teach me how to say it. I've just not mastered it yet, so sorry, Lola. But in any case, Lola is a really lovely friend of mine and an amazing travel writer and photographer. She's based in Sweden these days, and she has some really interesting stuff to tell us about her angle on food when she travels.
So one of the things I love to do when I travel is explore a culture through its food. So its traditional foods, the processes, as well as just capturing the culture around finding the food, making the food, growing the food, or fishing for the food. So it's not only trying the food for me, but it's actually, for example, going out with fishermen to see how they're catching a specific type of fish that's endemic to the region, or going out with a farmer, checking out his farm. So I really love those kind of farm-to-table experiences. So one of my favorites is when I was in the Seychelles, I was able to go out with a couple of fishermen to pull up their fish traps really early in the morning And that was a really fun experience because they pull up the fish traps, they take out the fish, take it right to the shores of a resort or hotel that then goes over to their blackboard at the restaurant and just kind of wipes it off and then writes the catch of the day. So it was really fun to kind of see that. It was really, it was really that fresh.
Yeah,
so it was
that's
really
cool.
fun to be part of that experience.
Sorry, I just love that. That's literally the catch of the day is whatever they bring up in their boat. That is brilliant.
So I thought it was great. And then they also went fishing for octopus as well. So that was really cool. So that's just one food experience. Another one is when I was traveling around the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy, we got to meet a lot of the local food producers. And these are kind of family business that have been going on for at least over a century, maybe 2 centuries. And so these are the traditional balsamic vinegar makers, the Parmesan cheese makers, the ones that make the Parma ham. So it was really cool going to see how they're kind of keeping that tradition alive, in 2015, 2016. So all those kind of interesting food experiences, not about trying the food itself, but about capturing and documenting the culture surrounding the food. That's what I really enjoy.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's really getting back to kind of the roots and the origins of things. Yeah, I never thought of it. I mean, I've seen some of your posts about like going fishing and stuff, and I think that's really cool. But it never occurred to me to think, yeah, that's kind of the precursor to what we eat and the traditions of what they eat. It all starts back at, how they grow it, how they catch it. That's such a great perspective to look at.
Exactly. And me personally, I'm not big into fishing myself, but I just love going out to see people that are truly passionate about it. So what I love is people that are really passionate about what they do. And that passion is kind of addictive or it's kind of contagious. So you get to learn and see what they do on a daily basis. That's why I also love spending time in markets. So either fish markets or traditional open air markets, and getting out with the vendors, seeing how they interact with their customers. So it's always fun to be in that environment.
Yeah, definitely. Such a different perspective. I imagine with the fishermen, is it often something that's been passed on, through several generations?
I think so. It's either, it goes through different generations, especially if it's a bigger business, or it's just something that they've grown up in the community, that maybe it's just a community of fishermen. And so they've grown up in that community and feel the most comfortable in that community and don't want to leave.
Yeah, actually, my grandfather was a fisherman, and
that's cool.
yeah, and yes, my parents used to go and collect fresh fish off the train because he lived a couple of hours away from Perth. But I once asked my dad, who then he was not a fisherman, he worked in a bank for like 44 years of his life. And I once asked him, which is quite different, but I once asked him, if you hadn't worked in the bank, if you could have your dream occupation, what would you do? And he said, oh yeah, I think I would have been a fisherman. I know, totally different. I was really surprised. But he talked about how, the tranquil nature of that job and, the satisfaction of the catch. And just, I think it's a kind of a really special kind of person. So, and a bit of a community, like you say. These are such great experiences that Lola's had. And I really like her attitude to exploring where the food comes from, not just how it ends up once you sit down at a local restaurant in a foreign country. Lola's published some really interesting blog posts and photos which relate to the trips that she mentioned. So in the show notes, I'm going to link to a post with a bunch of photos from the Seychelles on Lola's site. There's a really great one with a grinning fisherman and the trap that they pulled up, which I remembered as soon as Lola mentioned her trip to the Seychelles in our chat. And also another great post about the food producers she met in Emilia-Romagna in Italy. Although looking at the pictures in that post did give me a huge craving for cheese, I have to say. So watch out for that. Now, my next guest today is Martin Bailey. He's a photographer originally from England who's lived in Japan for a very long time. And the early part of his discussion on food in Japan here could make you a little bit squeamish. That's what happened to me, I have to say.
So, having lived in Japan for 25 years, I forgot that Japan is a travel destination for most people. So I thought I'd relay a few stories from when I first got here in 1991. And the first thing that I found to be pretty interesting was that not only do they eat raw fish, but they eat raw meat, raw lamb, raw beef. I've had raw horse here, and that they're kind of strange. But the one that blew my mind first of all was I went to a bar one day with some friends, and we saw sparrow on the menu. The little birds, sparrows, and I ordered a plate of sparrows. I just ordered sparrow. I didn't know how it was going to come out. And got a little plate, and there were 3 skewered sparrows on there, whole. They'd got their wings up, like out in front of them. The heads were still on, and the feet and everything. And they'd just been kind of plucked and just skewered and like the yakitori, the skewered chicken. Yeah. Only they were whole sparrows.
Oh my gosh!
And we said, so how do you eat them? There's not a lot of meat on them. And the guy in the restaurant just said the bones are so soft, you just eat them. Oh. And so we just tucked in, and I mean they were actually quite good, but it was sparrows.
Oh, that's a bit of a shock. Did you ever order sparrow again though?
I've never seen it again.
Oh, okay. It's an unusual delicacy.
We only saw it once on the menu, and I gave it a try. I'm glad I did. I got to the head with the beak, and that was all I left. But a friend of mine actually ate that as well, and said it was a little bit bitter. Apart from that, I'd never seen it again. I thought it was the weirdest thing.
Yeah, but then, I think that's pretty weird.
Yeah. The thing, of course, is in Japan, they also have something called natto, which is a fermented soybean, and that is something. It's one of those acquired tastes that even half the Japanese population don't acquire. It's like this sticky. It's some sort of a bacteria that grows on these things. I think it's even called natto kin, which is like natto bacteria. I'm not sure if that's the word they use in the West as well. But they smell like feet. They smell like sweaty feet. So initially, when someone gave me some to try, I just sort of dug my chopsticks in and tried them and didn't really like them. And then someone told me that you're supposed to mix a little bit of Japanese soy sauce in there. And when I did that, I fell in love with it. Just put a bit of soy sauce on, mix it together, put it on your rice, and then eat it together, and it's actually really tasty. So now, I mean, I'll eat natto once or twice a week, every week anyway. I have done ever since. But that's one of those things that, as far as interesting food experiences, if anyone comes to Japan and they want to find out why half of the population of Japan love it and half of them hate it, just try some natto. But don't forget to put a bit of soy sauce on, because you won't get it if you don't do that.
Yes, I remember when I lived in Japan having some lovely, kind people offering me natto as well. And I could tolerate it, but it wasn't something I could, perhaps I needed to try more regularly. But it's supposed to be super healthy, isn't it?
It is. It's really good for you. It does all sorts of good things inside your digestive system. A friend of mine, a doctor from Australia, he says that it actually helps going to the toilet as well.
Oh, okay.
He said he was going to the toilet much better after eating natto. So, and he's a doctor, he should know.
Well, that's true. Yes, he really should know. But it is, the smell is really not an attractive one. I remember that very well.
Yeah, tastes great though. Once you get it, it tastes great.
Well, it's probably a bit like Vegemite in Australia. Australians generally grow up enjoying it, and it's like a very salty black spread for your toast. But I always remember when I was teaching ESL here, and my poor students from various countries overseas would come and stay in host families, and the host families were really, really mean, and they'd say, "Here, try this. It's like Nutella." And it's nothing like Nutella, because it's the absolute opposite taste. It's not sweet. It's very, very salty. And they would, spread it on thickly on their toast and take a big bite, and blah, like their taste buds were in complete revolt over it.
I've done that. I like Nutella, and I actually quite like Vegemite as well. But I generally tend to spread everything too thickly, and I did exactly that the first time I tried it. And it's almost, you need it thinner than the margarine or butter, really, don't you?
Absolutely. Just need just a taste, really, just a scraping, and that's optimal because it's really a strong flavour.
It is, yeah. It's made obviously with the name Vegemite. I'm sure it's made from vegetables, but it reminded me of in the UK we had something called Marmite. And I'm not sure if that's a beef extract, but they taste very, very similar.
Yes, they are similar. And I think Vegemite's actually made from a yeast extract.
Okay.
So I guess, and some people did say to me that it reminds them a little bit of beer, like there's sort of a similarity with the taste of beer. So, just really salty. So, yeah, it's a very unusual food. But I would rather have Vegemite than skewered sparrows, thank you.
I've got to admit, I probably would as well.
Those really are some unusual foods that Martin's been introduced to in Japan. I'm sure that the Japanese find some of my food unusual too, so I know it goes both ways, but the natto that he referred to, I can still smell the smell, and it is well over 10 years since I encountered that stuff. And I believe it's supposed to be super healthy, but that's just not enough for me to get into eating it regularly, I don't think. I also encountered lots of other unusual foods in Japan, that's for sure, and I just try to remember they're healthy. That's the best way. Now, my final guest today has some more somewhat squeamish food experiences, but again, she's really a lot braver than me, I think. So we're going to hear from Cheney of Traveling Honeybird and some of the other unusual foods she has encountered all around the world.
Food cultural differences are always a lot of fun as well.
Tell me more.
Whether it's sort of things that you can and can't eat, or things that are appropriate to eat. Traveling in Mongolia, anything that was meat was considered appropriate. There was no overt taboo about what you could or couldn't eat. If it was a meat product, it was cooked, put with noodles, and you ate it in some sort of soup. And certainly when you travel to a country where they eat animals that we as Australians have idolised, dogs, cats, horses, it's always quite interesting when you see that on a menu.
Yeah, so I grew up vegetarian, so it's even harder for me to see these kinds of things. Did you eat everything you were given in Mongolia?
I did, and had no problem with it.
Right, good.
Most of the time we knew exactly what it was. And even for part of our trip, we had a sheep that came and joined us, mutton chops, and then he got eaten. So I was not one who could sit there and watch him actually be butchered.
No, me neither.
That was something that I just didn't feel that I needed to see in my day.
No.
But some members of our group did, people who had not seen that.
Right.
And there were quite a few people that were quite hands-on, were quite happy to help and learn how it was all done, which I think was a fascinating experience for people.
Yes, you're right. It wouldn't be something for me, but I mean, it's a normal part of everyday life and farm life, etc. So fair enough. And what kind of unusual? I don't know if I want to know the answer, but I'm asking anyway. What unusual meats did you eat in Mongolia?
I know that we definitely had horse because I ordered that.
Did you? But you're a horse lover.
Yes, I am. But if it was truly horse, it was delicious.
Okay.
But I could not have honestly told you the difference between horse meat and beef.
Oh, okay.
Which leads me to kind of believe maybe because, we were a group of Westerners in this restaurant up in Ugi that perhaps we hadn't been actually given horse. But again, it was, how do you tell?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, you've ordered a dish and it turns up and it's quite edible, so you eat it.
Fair enough. Yes. Good on you. Has there ever been anything on your travels that you wouldn't eat?
Oh, a lot of things.
Okay,
chicken feet. I won't do. Tarantulas in Cambodia, we ordered them. And everybody else in our group quite happily had a nibble and a taste. And that was one thing that I mentally could not push myself to eat.
I can understand that.
And again, having been in South America and Southeast Asia where tarantulas are around, you can pat them and, they can sit on your shoulders and all kinds of things. I knew how they felt in my hands. I wasn't willing to have that feeling in my mouth.
Yes, exactly. Oh, what did your group think of them, though, the people who did eat them?
Everybody was quite polite about it. They just said it was quite a bland dish. It looked fantastic. It was a very Instagram-worthy dish that was served up to us at one of those social enterprise restaurants.
Right.
But just no flavour. And again, I go, it's just a little insect. Well, big, but...
Yeah.
It's not like he's running and eating through the spice rack, flavouring himself.
I guess not. So. What a shame. Yeah, I think tarantulas are definitely not on my list of want to try. I guess because I grew up fairly vegetarian, I'm not a particularly adventurous eater when it comes to anything that was a living thing, I guess. Yeah, I did eat some unusual things in Japan, some things that even my local friends didn't know what they were, but they were all generally sort of seafood-oriented things, and that doesn't bother me so much.
I purchased whale jerky in Japan, but have not eaten it.
Oh, my goodness.
So the store, because I was in Japan, in Tokyo last year with James, and he was there for the first time, we tried to find this store, but it's no longer there.
Uh-huh.
It was just a whale restaurant.
Ooh.
And it probably took me about 3 days to realise what it was. It was one of those places that, I walked past every day, a couple of times a day. And it was only till I actually looked at it properly and went, why is there a giant, really happy plush whale toy?
Oh, no.
Yes. Didn't cost me very much to buy a very small packet of whale jerky, which is just more a piece of conversation art these days.
Right. You're not intending to eat it?
It's probably about 6 years old now.
Oh, okay. No, let's not eat that.
So I don't think you should eat it.
No, I'm not recommending that.
Even when I bought it, it was never I really want to try this. It was more of this is amazingly confusing.
Yes.
I need to have it.
Yes, yes, exactly. More amazing that it exists. That's why I'm buying it rather than, yum, let's have some tomorrow. I think I'd like to put it on public record that I will never eat a tarantula. I can't think of anything that would persuade me to do such a thing. I actually don't even like being in the same room as a tarantula, alive or dead or anything. So just so you know, please don't send me tarantulas. I hope you have enjoyed listening to these unusual food experiences from Jean and Martin, and also to Lola's insights into tracking down where food comes from. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you do about food when you travel. Have you eaten something particularly unusual, especially if it turned out to be really delicious? That's the kind of news I'd love to hear about. And have you ever tried to track down where your food's coming from? Have you been visiting farms or other kinds of local producers, or been out on a fishing boat like Lola? Do let me know. You can always reach me on Twitter at Amanda Kendall and use the Thoughtful Travel Pod hashtag. You can also find me on Facebook by searching for Not a Ballerina. Now, I do want to give a very big thank you, as always, to my great guests. So Lola can be found in a few places online, but particularly at her website and blog, GeoTraveller's Niche, at lolaakinmade.com. I'll put a link in the show notes, not just to her main site, but to those couple of posts I mentioned too about the Seychelles and the food producers in Italy, because it's not only interesting to read, but the photos are gorgeous. Lola works with National Geographic as well, so you will agree that her photos are beautiful. She also has a really interesting website if you're travelling to Stockholm called Slow Travel Stockholm, which is at slowtravelstockholm.com. So have a look online if you're heading to Sweden anytime soon. Similarly, I've got two great photographers on the podcast today. Martin Bailey can be found at martinbaileyphotography.com. And if you are intrigued about combining a bit of photography and travel, he runs regular tours and workshops, and he goes to some of my most favourite places. So in the near future, he's got trips to Iceland, Japan, Namibia, so a really big range, and he's just been in Greenland as well. So I'm very jealous about the life he leads, I have to admit. And you can find his workshops at martinbaileyphotography.com/workshops. And finally, my returning guest was the lovely Jean Cheney from Traveling Honeybird. You can find her at travelinghoneybird.com, And if you want to hit her up for some more unusual food tastings, she seems like she's had quite the experience of unusual foods. So you can check all of these details out in the show notes. And for this episode, you'll find the show notes at notaballerina.com/23. If you have a spare moment and you happen to be wandering around in iTunes, do leave the Thoughtful Travel Podcast a rating or a review. I always get really excited to see those reviews come in. So thank you very much in advance. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.
Jackrabbit FM. For your ears.
Who is that? Hi, podcast.